really did help the Russians attack us, whether or not Mr. Pinedo knew that's what was going to happen with the information that he was selling. The Russians, according to the big indictment today, they used stolen credit card numbers, stolen bank account numbers, stolen identities, including from real Americans, to open online accounts, online payment accounts, to facilitate the financial part of their attack. The financial part of what Mueller and his team of prosecutors lay out today as a large, well-coordinated, expensive, thorough operation to try to swing the 2016 presidential election to Donald Trump. So why was this one American guy arrested and charged and flipped into a cooperating witness in conjunction with this case today? Why did Mueller bring these charges today against these 13 Russian individuals and the Internet Research Agency they worked for in Russia and two of the companies in Russia that were used to fund the operations of that Internet Research Agency? I don't know. I don't know why this all happened today, and frankly, neither do you. But there is a ton of new information that we just learned today from this yet another surprise move from the special counsel. So we've been able to surmise, just as civilians watching this story, right? We've been able to surmise from the beginning that there were three prongs to the Russian attack. Right? There were three ways that they attacked us. Number one, they attacked our actual election system. They hacked into the voting rolls in more than 20 states. Two, they attacked the Democratic Party. They hacked into and stole documents and emails from the Clinton campaign and the DNC. And three, they attacked us, the public, or at least they targeted all of us, when they decided that they wouldn't just steal those Democratic documents and use them for spying purposes. Instead, they would turn them around and release them back into the U.S. in a weaponized way to try to hurt our perception of one side in the election. They targeted us with those documents that they stole. They targeted us with propaganda. They targeted us with considerable effort to manipulate the American social media environment and all sorts of different online discussions about our election, to try to change our perception of our own politics and our own political figures. Now, we've been able to see that from the outside. And in terms of that third prong of the Russian effort, the part where they were targeting we, the public, there has been a lot of really good public reporting on how that last part of the Russian attack played out. That's how we know about the Russians buying online ads to try to influence the election, and the Russian Twitter bots, and the Russian fake Facebook groups, and Russian fake online personas that were designed to look American, and that was designed to make our political discourse even more toxic and extreme and polarizing than it already is. And frankly, they were designed to boost Donald Trump's chances in the election and to weaken Hillary Clinton. You've been hearing this story, you've been hearing details of the story for the past year because there's been a bunch of really good journalism about those Russian efforts in the past year. But that was just one prong of the three-prong attack, right? They attacked the election system, they attacked the Democrats, and they targeted the public. Against the other two prongs of that attack, they're breaking into the DNC, them breaking into the voter rolls. You know, who would have thought that the first part of this three-prong attack to actually result in real criminal charges against Russians wouldn't be hacking into the Democratic Party, wouldn't be hacking into state voter rolls. It would be this third prong, the stuff they did to try to influence public opinion online. I at least would not have predicted if there were going to be Russian criminal charges here, criminal charges against Russian citizens. I would not have predicted that they'd be for that part of the attack. But now they've brought these criminal charges. And thanks to this very detailed indictment, we've got a ton of new information about exactly what the special counsel believes Russia did, and why the special counsel believes it's not just an American, not just America being victimized by a Russian intelligence operation. Now we've got all this detail about why the special counsel thinks that what Russia did in terms of targeting the U.S. public is an actual crime. Now, I have no idea how Mueller and his team got the kinds of documents they got to put together this indictment. But they've got a lot of primary source material. They've got direct quotes from internal reviews from inside this Internet Research Agency from which the Russians were running this campaign. This is a quote from the indictment. Quote, on or about September 14th, 2016, in an internal review of an organization created and controlled Facebook group called Secure Borders, The account specialist was criticized for having a, quote, low number of posts dedicated to criticizing Hillary Clinton. The specialist was told, quote, it is imperative to intensify criticizing Hillary Clinton in future posts. How did the Mueller team get those direct quotes from an internal review about one of these Russian-created Facebook groups? How'd they get that? They quote from internal documents saying that the goal of the Russians setting up these fake American online personas was to create leaders of public opinion in America, quoting from the internal documents at the Internet Research Agency. How did they get direct quotes? How did they get documents like that out of this Russian operation inside Russia? How did they get the exact internal structure of the Russian team that was working on the operation to attack the U.S. election? They've got them all listed by job title, by their full names, by their rank in the organization, and who they reported to. They know the internal name that the Russians were using for the U.S. election operation inside this organization. They called it the Translator Project. Special counsel also appears to have obtained personal emails from at least one individual Russian who they are charging today, one individual Russian who they say was involved in the attack on our election. Quote, defendants and their co-conspirators destroyed evidence for the purpose of impeding the investigation. On or about September 13th, 2017, Viktorovna Kaverzina wrote in an email to a family member, we had a slight crisis here at work. The FBI busted our activity. Not a joke. So I got preoccupied with covering tracks, together with the colleagues. Kaverzina further wrote, I created all these pictures and posts, and the Americans believed that it was written by their people. How did Mueller and his team get this kind of material? How did they even get just the real names of all the people working inside this organization in Russia? These people who had created all these pictures and posts where the Americans believed it was their own people. I mean, the whole part and parcel of this attack was that they disguised their identities. They made themselves appear as if they were operating from within the United States. They covered their tracks, used false information and false identities in order to cover their financial trail. How did they track this all down and get these people's individual emails, names, and work products from inside this Russian organization? The indictment today claims that two of the named defendants, Anna Bogacheva and Alexandra Krylova, traveled to the United States in person in 2014 to collect intelligence for this operation. The President Trump today, exclaimed about that date because 2014 was before he had even declared that he was running for president. The implication of his tweet on this subject today was that he should be seen as in the clear. As he says at the end of his tweet there, no collusion, because the Russians started this operation even before he was technically running. Well, if the indictment is correct, the Russians did start this operation before he was technically running. Looked at from another angle, though, you could also say they started their operation right after he returned from his trip to Moscow in November 2013 for the Miss Universe pageant. And I don't know if that's relevant. I don't know if this was pegged to, when he was going to start running or anything else about his relationships with Russia, if that's at all relevant. Honestly, in this indictment, if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to find it. There's nothing in this indictment either way when it comes to the question of whether any Americans knowingly colluded with this Russian operation. The indictment doesn't make any allegations about that at all. What this indictment is a ton more information and serious criminal charges concerning what the Russians did. And you can tell from the guilty plea of the one American guy they charged today, and you can tell from a lot of the specificity in the indictment that parts of how they were able to trace all of this was clearly money. I mean, the Russian operation paid out a lot of money to do what they did. They paid out for online ads that were pro-Trump and anti-Clinton. The Russian operation paid for real live Americans who apparently didn't know they were participating in a Russian op. They paid Americans to set up pro-Trump and anti-Clinton rallies. They paid to buy supplies for protests and marches. They paid for, on more than one occasion, this unusual thing. Quote, on or about August 18th, 2016, defendants and their co-conspirators sent money via interstate wire to a real U.S. person recruited by the organization using one of their false U.S. personas. They sent this money to a real U.S. person to, quote, build a cage large enough to hold an actress depicting Hillary Clinton in a prison uniform. Elsewhere in the indictment, quote, for example, defendants and their co-conspirators asked one U.S. person to build a cage on a flatbed truck and another U.S. person to wear a costume portraying Hillary Clinton in a prison uniform. Defendants and their co-conspirators paid these individuals to complete the requests. And it's an amazing thing to know that that kind of anti-Hillary Clinton agitprop was a Kremlin-funded operation on an American street. But it also looks like the payment trail there is one that was found and followed by the special counsel and his prosecutors. And so now we've got these criminal charges against 13 different Russians and the Russian Internet Research Agency, the Troll Farm, and 2 Russian organizations that were used as funding sources for that op. And in addition to these charges, we've got chapter and verse, not just on the Russian game plan, but how it can be charged as a criminal matter in U.S. federal court. By not reporting these expenditures to election authorities, by making illegal expenditures as foreigners trying to influence our election, by obtaining visas to visit the U.S. under false pretenses. Those are crimes. Those are alleged crimes now in this indictment. So they're saying this isn't just something the Russians did, which we should see in a spy versus spy context. What the Russians did was a criminal conspiracy that involved a number of chargeable criminal acts that they believe they can prove in court. Totally new advance in this special counsel investigation, and it brings me to some questions.